pumpkin. Of course, a bunch of people here yet, but okay, so we'll figure that out. There are still 2 pumpkins. If you want to participate in the contest, it is $20 to enter. We have carving things here and some paints and stuff, so you can decorate it during the party and be in time for judging. The winner will get $100. You will leave here today with $100 if you win the contest. So for 20 bucks, I think it's a good investment and you get to take your pumpkin home. So if you're interested, find me. I think that's it. Thank you.
Do you have an announcement?
Sorry. Just 2 quick announcements. One, this Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. is the Music and Worship Committee meeting. So if you're in that committee, just a reminder, we will meet. You can meet either in person with us here in the office, or there is a Zoom link. So, and if you're not currently on the Music and Worship Committee and would like to participate, let me know. I can get you that Zoom link. And then next week, Thursday at 6:30 p.m., we're doing the hall setup for our final coffee house of the fall before we take a break. And that will be for Tyler Nail, which will be next or 2 Saturdays from now on the 8th. Yeah. Oh, yes. We have guests today from Second Parish. Hello. And that's all I have.
Okay, as you know, our fair is coming up, it's on the 22nd, and I have the cards for the items for the food basket that I'm going to give out. And also on the card it says 2 scratch tickets. It can be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and whatever amount you want. We do need the tickets back by the 16th. And the food needs to be back by Friday, the 21st. Thank you.
Anyone else? Good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Our opening words today are one of my favorite poems. It's it's a Celtic poem honoring our ancestors. When you were born, the earth became your body, the stone became your bone, the sea became your blood, the sunbeam your eye. The moon became your mind, and the wind became your breath. When you passed to the other world, your breath became the wind, your mind became the moon, your eye became the sun, your blood became the sea, your bone became the stone, your body became the earth. When you were born, you did the same for us. You called forth the earth and stone, the sea rose, the sun descended, the moon shone down, the wind sang. For those who come after, we shall do as you did for us. When we are gone, we shall do as you have done. We all stand for the lighting of the chalice and the affirmation. Rick's going to help us out with that.
All right, you'll find the words in your order of service. Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage in our chalice of community, let us open to the presence of the sacred. And now if you'll join me in the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
I don't see Vicky. Is Vicky here?
Not yet.
Vicky's not here yet. Not a problem. Oh, may I join the choir invisible of those immortal dead who live again in minds made better by their presence. Live in the pulses stirred to generosity, in deeds of daring rectitude, in scorn of miserable aims that end with self. In thoughts sublime that pierce the night like stars, with their mild persistence, we urge our search to vaster issues. So to live is heaven, to make undying music in the world, breathing a beauteous order that controls with growing sway the growing life of humanity. That better self shall live till human time folds its eyelids and the human sky gathered like a scroll within the tomb. This is the life to come, which martyred souls have made more glorious for us, who strive to follow. May I reach that purest heaven, be to other souls the cup of strength in some great agony. Enkindle generous ardor, feed pure love, beget the smiles that have no cruelty. Be the sweet presence of a good diffused and in diffusion evermore intense. So shall I join the choir invisible, whose music is the gladness of the world. Choir invisible is with us today. Now it's time for the kids to show off their costumes. Take it away, Maddie. While the kids are off having fun, we'll join them in a little bit. We will now take up offering and gifts. Mike or Julie, could you help out, please? Spirit of truth, of life and power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. O bind our hearts, the sacred hour, in faith, hope, and charity. Amen. Halloween ritual. Why do we still do it? It's been handed down and it has taken on the form of habit. We just do it. And oftentimes we don't remember why. For those of us who haven't been to this service here before, we kind of do a mashup of Halloween, Day of the Dead, and Samhain. So it gets a little tricky sometimes. Halloween, just to recap what we're celebrating and the rituals we celebrate, is the night before All Saints' Day, followed by All Souls' Day. And those are the Christian, what I call the Christian usurpations of pagan holiday of Samhain, which is originally a harvest festival from my people and probably some of yours, the Celtic people and European Celts. They took those two holidays and they sandwiched it right over Samhain. Because much like Samhain is a celebration and an exercise in us trying to exercise control over chaos, the Christian church at the time felt they needed to exercise a little control over pagan holidays. Samhain is also the Celtic New Year. So this weekend marks the first of the year in the Celtic calendar. It literally means the death of summer, when the god of light goes to the underworld and does his traveling and is absent for a while. Then we have the Day of the Dead. So what we end up here is I try to do a synthesis of all these things. And like I said, it seems to come out as a mashup instead. But it's a celebration of a harvest festival. And harvest festivals are celebrated the world over. And why do we celebrate harvest festivals? And why do we celebrate these religions, these rituals? I think it's because we're scared, just like they are. It's a world full of chaos that we really have no control over. There is this illusion of control with our insurance and our grasping and our clinging. But much like Jim Morrison says, we're riders on a storm cast into this world, and we have to make sense of it because human beings tell stories to make themselves comfortable and make themselves feel powerful, not just to entertain themselves. But gathering to honor our ancestors is my favorite of all these traditions. I mean, I can go trick-or-treating and I can get all the candy I want and ruin my teeth and other things. And it's not all about the candy. The candy actually comes down to us from two-door times. And that is the origin of trick-or-treating. But I didn't want to get too heavy into the old school traditions because I know that I very much like these rituals. I like the metaphor and, you know, the symbolism of it all. Others may not. But like I said, we do it for the same reasons they did. We celebrate them because they make us feel comfortable. They create a source of security. We empower ourselves, as the forebearers did, in the face of a world full of chaos and calamity. And like I said, we make up stories. There's lots of stories we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves that the sun will come up tomorrow. That is a story. We tell ourselves that we'll wake up in the morning. We tell ourselves that there'll be plenty of food to eat. There'll be plenty of water to drink. All of the necessities will be met. But that is just a hope. In those times, it really was a question of drought, famine, and pestilence. Those were the true demons running around back then because you had to survive. Lately, I've been wondering why we're going to celebrate Halloween, especially with all the real horrible horror that is already out there in the world. Why do you want to celebrate a holiday of death and gore? People say. And I was questioning that myself this time around because it's been rough the past few years with everything going on. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do this today. But then I answered that question. There is real horror in the world. From Gaza, Israel, Sudan, Ukraine, pick something. It's there. Then there's the upheaval on our own streets that's got me all worked up. But still, I find myself sitting around indulging in old Vincent Price movies, Peter Cushing, and all of that, pounding stakes into vampires' hearts and werewolves and all of this. And I said to myself, I can turn that off. I can close the book. I can turn the movie off. I can laugh at the exorcist's head spinning around. Because I'll take all the fake, make-believe, pretend horror I can take any day of the week over the serious, real horror that is out there. That's why we celebrate this holiday. That's why I celebrate it, because I'm scared. I'm scared that it's all going to fall apart. A couple of years ago, people might say, oh, it's not going to fall apart. Everything's fine. We're sailing along. Look at all these fine institutions, all this strong government. Where did it all go? Like I said, upheaval on our streets. I don't like it, but I'll take Vincent Price burning zombies in a pit out of the back of his old mobile station wagon, being the last man on earth. Because there's too much pain in the world. That's why we celebrate Samhain, Halloween, All Saints, whatever you call it. That's why we celebrate anything. Because we are finite creatures. We know we're going to die. That's not pleasant, to say the least. But everybody knows it. And there's this thing hanging over our head, and we all tend to think that it's so far away. When some of us know recently that it's right around the corner. And we lie to ourselves and tell ourselves stories that I'm going to grow old to about 105, whatever. And I'm going to see all my grandchildren grow up and all of that. But will I? Will you? Nobody knows. And I think that with all the calamity in the world today, I honestly just want to stick my head in the sand of Lon Chaney turning into a werewolf or anything like that. Because it's getting intense. And that's why we celebrate these rituals for each other. We tell stories to comfort ourselves. We tell stories to comfort each other. We tell ourselves stories in our head, little voices, little arguments. It happens all the time. And I think far too many of us ignore it. You know, there is a tradition amongst the Buddhist faith called graveyard meditation. And over in India, graveyards are mostly along, I've never been there, but along the Ganges where they cremate all of the bodies. And there are some graveyards right down there to the water, temples and all of that. But the graveyard meditation was undertaken first by monks. And basically what you do is you go into a graveyard late at night and you sit amongst the dead, and they do this, and I've done it, much to the chagrin of the Abington Police Force. I was chanting a bit too loud one night, whistling by a graveyard. But you're supposed to sit and contemplate your ultimate demise. And it sounds morbid to sit around and think about you're going to die. I'm going to die. He's going to die. She's going to die. They're going to die. We're all going to die. It's always hanging over our heads. And then we come to celebrate these holidays, and with all this calamity in the world and all of this angst and anger between everybody, people are not going home for the holidays. Part of the reason I don't go visit my family on Thanksgiving, maybe they're listening, is that I want to have those conversations about those walls that separate us, those barriers to true relationship. I want to have those conversations, the most difficult conversations in the world, because you suddenly find out that that person that you grew up with, or the person you married, your neighbor, your friend, old college, high school buddy, is suddenly somebody you don't seem to know. That in itself is a death. When relationships die, everything else will go with it. We have to celebrate this holiday with fun and festivity. We have to remember the dead. We have to honor them by never giving in to all of that fear and never giving up. So we celebrate these rituals and all other rituals in our religious life because of that, because we're a singular, individual, lonely soul. But not today, because we're all here together. That's what it is. It's relationships and community. And I'm glad to be a part of building that, because it keeps me going when I sometimes just want to run away to Ireland, if I could, and watch all this suffering from afar. But I'm here, I'm with you, and I hope you're with me too. If you will please turn to 721, responsive reading in your gray hymnal. They are still with us. With this reading, I will step over there and I will light that candle. And at this time, after that candle is lit, anyone who would like to come up, either here or over there, and speak a few about a loved one departed now, then, recently, or a long time ago. So if you want, come up, say a few brief words. If you do not wish to speak, over here at this table, I have provided a stack of paper and a pen and a little bowl. And you can write the name of your deceased loved one. You can write a little message like, "Miss you, Sarah. Rest in peace, Joe," whichever it is. And they will be collected and saved, and they will end up in the fireplace room in the kindling box. Because much like in the days of old, with the bonfires and the bonfires, they would throw rocks into the fire with their name on it for good fortune, prayers of the future. And then the Druid priest would come and look at that rock and give you a forecast divination for the future and what your life might hold. So they will be used to kindle fires in the fireplace for the next few celebrations, rekindling that flame of community up into the heavens. So responsorial number 721. They are still with us. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living, it is right to name the power. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are still with us. The lives they lived hold us still. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us and with them choose the deeper path of living. Now you are welcome. Anyone like to come up and speak? Name the names of the living. And this.
I just wanted to take a few minutes and tell you about me and Rick's friend, John, who passed away this past April, just a few days before his 40th birthday. We met John in college. We both knew him, but we didn't know each other yet. John was my neighbor in the dorms, and to say that he was gay was an understatement. I think you knew that about him before you knew his name. He was one of those people that just could not hide any aspect of himself, which unfortunately was kind of the root of his problems. He grew up gay in rural Virginia, in an area that really was not ready to accept that about him, but he couldn't be anything other than himself. When I met John, he was just full of life and laughter and was so fun and was really good at getting people to accept him for who he was, just because he just exuded love. And there were a lot of people that we went to college with that had never met a gay person before, had never met anybody like John before, and through their friendships with John, really had their perspective changed. That was kind of the common thread when we had his funeral this past summer. So many people just, that's how they connected to the LGBTQ community, was John was the first person they knew that kind of introduced them to that. I was from up here, so he was not the first gay person that I met. So my relationship with him was a little bit different. But because of where he grew up and how he was not accepted by his family and neighbors early on, they did mostly come around in the end, but sadly, the damage was kind of done. The first time he was homeless, he was 17 years old. That was his introduction to a life of drug use, alcohol use, and some other unpleasant things that people, especially at 17, should really not be exposed to. You would never have known this about him because he was always so joyful and so happy and so loving. You really had to be in his inner circle to know that he had experienced those things. Fast forward decades, when Rick and I were adults and living in Virginia, and John had lost a lot of work because he was sick. He lost his job. The owner of the home in which he rented a room was selling the house to move to a retirement community. He had no money. He did not want to live with his family because of the struggles that he had had growing up. And also, they still lived in a rural area. He would struggle to find work. He was a social worker, so all the jobs for him were in the city. Rick and I took him into our home, and he lived with us for 6 months while he got his shit together, pardon my language. He continued to struggle, but he eventually got a job. He eventually moved back home with his family. At the time, that was the right thing. He was stable for a while, and then COVID happened. And as you all know, many people whose stability was kind of tenuous, COVID is when it fell apart, and it certainly fell apart for John. His addiction grew. He ended up being arrested and incarcerated for 9 months. During that time, Rick and I called him pretty much every week, wrote him letters, sent him books, stayed in touch with him, stayed in touch with his mother. Then he was released early and moved in with another friend of ours, and sadly did not wake up one morning. He died of an overdose. And I said to our friends when we had his funeral this past summer that when Rick and I picked him up the day that he moved in with us, we knew we were saving his life. You could see on his face that he was really not doing well, that it was more than just he was going to lose his home. He was really in a bad way. And we learned that he had lived with a lot of people over the years. He had moved from relatives' house to friend's house to different apartments. And I told all of my friends that everybody who took him in or helped him or even just spent time with him, you know, we couldn't ultimately save him, but we each of us bought him more time. We bought him more life. We bought him a few more days or a few more weeks, a few more years for him to continue to spread the love and joy that he had in him. And so I'm very grateful that we had that opportunity with our friend John to have a friendship that was maybe a little bit different than most people have with their friends. And I'm so glad that we got to give him a little bit more time. I'm sad that it wasn't enough. And I miss him. But if you find somebody in your life that you have the opportunity in some way to give them more time, please do it, because you don't know when it will be enough. So, John, I miss you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for lifting up John. Never met him. Somehow I feel an energy about that. Wasn't expecting to say anything, but with what you've had to say, Jude, now suddenly I do. I think of death like an allegorical character, because somehow that both frightens me and comforts me. And when we see death come and go from our various circles of life, people we know, people we love, whether it's a little on the fringe or whether it's very intimate. And when you accept what you were saying, Jude, about life being finite, it does have an end, and death will visit us at some point. I feel that I've seen or known my allegorical character, having lost my biological mother at the age of 7 months, never knowing her. So I feel that death, and I guess my premature birth, touched me in the day of my birth, touched me 7 months later. And then various people that pass over the years comes to usher them to what comes next. This summer was interesting, having planned a trip to a far-off region of the world that I've never traveled to before, but had ancestry there. This is happening at about the same time that in summer, I was informed that my biological parent, father, had had a series of strokes and would not survive a week. Just sort of comes out of left field. And so how do you feel when death comes close to you again, even if you've been estranged from that individual? And as expected, death did what he, she, they does. And they ushered that individual into the next. And suddenly, when we're talking about our ancestors and our lifting up the people who have passed before, even though I have loving parents and I have family, I suddenly became an orphan to parents that I don't know. And that makes you reflect on your mortality. And I know many people, their parents have gone on before them. I see that death comes close to our family with my wife's parents, who are in the twilight of their years, one suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. And if you know that experience, you see day and day the parts of the body and the mind and the soul that were able to communicate with you slowly go away. And I see the allegorical character coming and just waiting for the moment, whenever that may be. So yes, at Halloween, when we're putting up our graveyards and our tombstones and putting on these great costumes and lifting up all of these sort of traditions that have come out of Samhain and celebrations of the time of the year, or in my colonial studies, a holiday that took place a few days from now on November 5th called Pope's Day, which again, when you look at the traditions of that day, very much feel like a precursor to what we do, going around in candy and costumes and trick or treating. But we find this time, the commonality in this day is this allegorical character of death that we flirt with. So thank you for what you said, Jude. Thank you for lifting up John. And as we may all reflect on people that have gone on before us and that we will someday go to.
Anyone else? Okay. I guess I'll go a little bit. Lost my mother this past about a year ago. And my father's been passed for quite some time. If you come up here and you look at the pictures displayed up here, you'll notice that there is one thing that's not a picture. It's a saucer and a mug. Inside that mug is a finger rosary that belonged to my mother. When the English were taking over Ireland way back in the day, they outlawed the Gaelic language and their religion, and they couldn't practice their Catholic religion openly. They had what they called bush schools where they went in and taught them to teach the rosary. So the rosary became a little thing called the finger rosary, a little thing you could hide in your pocket and say the rosary without the big bad English Protestants finding out. So that mug is all that remains of my father's restaurant. And inside of it is the finger rosary. And I usually keep that upstairs and on my altar where I do my spiritual practices. So that represents them. Death of a restaurant, too. New highway, closed it down. I won't keep you because we have some coffee and some goodies to eat. There they are. Excuse me. I would like to offer a short closing benediction. And then we will extinguish our chalice, and Maddie will play a little more music. Bless us with peace. O source of peace, lead us to peace, a peace profound and true, leading us to a healing, to mastery of that drives us to war within ourselves and with others. May our deeds inscribe us in the book of life and blessing, righteousness and peace. Source of peace, bless us with peace. You'll join me in the extinguishing of the chalice. You may stand if you like, you don't have to. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for indulging me again.